It's now 3.5 days since the quake that shook Canterbury to its absolute core. Only days, but surely it must seem a lifetime for those traumatised by the Earth's violence. And it seems cruel, nature, doesn't it? It seems cruel how the aftershocks continue to distress and alarm those who surely by now deserve to be spared. For exhausted emergency crews, that means having to continually reassess the safety of some of Christchurch's landmark buildings. Shortly, we'll talk to Dr. Calvin Berryman about what's behind the ongoing quakes. But first, Michael Holland joins those risking their lives to make damaged buildings safe.
She's a graceful old girl holding on by a thread.
It's one of those quick, have a look inside and get out.
Get out, yep.
Her 104-year reign as Christchurch's tallest brick building, potentially just one big tremor away from ending.
If we have a serious aftershock at the moment, I would suggest that you move extremely quickly, because I'll be over the top of you and we're both going to be heading down there to get past those white cars as quickly as we can.
But despite the danger, and the extensive cracking shows that to be so, they've no choice but to go inside and check the building's stability.
Going to go and do an internal examination of this building now.
We're allowed in, but it's made clear it's at our own risk.
So we'll have to do some serious talking on this one, Des. Spray committing manpower, etc.
And not for a moment longer than needed.
Next floor. These are all locked.
Okay, next floor is then.
We're cracking right here, through to the roof as well.
Getting up there's going to be the hard bit.
They're members of the urban search and
Cracking in the
rescue
corner.
team, and now 4 days into this earthquake emergency, it's all about making safe damaged buildings. While their long-term fate's decided.
If we get more aftershocks and it just moves that load around, we're concerned that pier will pop out into the street and then we'll get a collapse of the floors. If that top floor, parts of that were to come down, the distance that that's going to fall was right across the street.
Back inside, and pulses are starting to quicken the further we climb. The violence of the quake more evident on the upper floors.
It's got all that weight sitting out there.
None of these outside piers, these are the ones with all the cracks outside too, aren't they?
The top corner up here is broken loose on the top floor.
Yeah, it's a big crack in the south wall here.
And with that, we're downstairs and out. As they plan a stopgap fix, one they hope will withstand any further shakes.
How many piers do you think you're going to have to do?
Well, it's the ones
so
that
we
got
can
the
start
cracks in,
looking.
so
Yeah,
you almost count the 1, 2,
Yeah.
3,
All
4,
of
5,
them.
6, 7. That one over there by the air conditioner's brand new from last night's.
right. Yeah, shocks.
Eerie, surreal, bizarre, they're all overused terms, but right here, right now, absolutely apt. This is one of the Christchurch CBD's busiest intersections. Lunchtime Tuesday. The pedestrian beacon still sounds, no one crosses. The lights still turn green, no traffic passes.
Your kit's ready, you've got water in your bags.
For the search and rescue teams, 120 personnel all up, today was supposed to be about making good on lesser jobs, jobs that could afford to wait. But the sizable earth shakes that rumbled through the night forced a rescheduling of priorities.
These aftershocks are getting a bit irritating, to be honest. Yeah, they're a bit of a novelty for a while, but I've had enough of them now.
We're all normal, aren't we? You know, you get an earthquake of that magnitude, you get those aftershocks of that magnitude. Look, it takes its toll on anybody. It's scary stuff. We've never experienced that before in our lives.
It depends on how it goes, if it's a long flowing motion or if it's sharp and jolts as to what further damage may be caused.
The continuing jolts adding to the building's misery.
Some of those cracks have started opening up, so we're getting more damage just with the aftershocks that are happening.
But not necessarily its demise.
They're fairly certain that they can stabilise these piers and at least hold it.
We're looking to just contain those so they don't blow out any further. We're going to do that by strapping it with plywood sheets front and back, and then get some tension straps wrapped around the piers, and it's really just going to hold it all together.
The building's owner, though,
When she was built, she was Christchurch's newest skyscraper.
not quite so convinced.
Big bit of history.
And now?
Now she is history, I think. I don't see how they can save her.
beautiful old building, and it would be a real shame to lose it here in Christchurch.
But with more shakes expected tonight, only nature knows whether she or man will have the final say.
We know, of course, all this damage was caused by a fault line. We also know it wasn't the fault line scientists predicted would cause us trouble at some stage. That's the Alpine fault. The Christchurch quake was caused by a different fault, unseen and inactive for 16,000 years. So there are more of those out there. Should we be worried? Is the Alpine fault still looming, or do we simply just not know enough about geological activity? One man who does, GNS Natural Hazards Manager and Earthquake Geologist Dr. Kelvin Berryman. He joins me live now from Christchurch. Look, Dr. Berryman, just dealing with those aftershocks, which seem to be upsetting a lot of people down there, how do you know that we could expect something, say, up to 6?
That's really only based on largely overseas experience and some New Zealand experience, that it's quite common to have the largest aftershocks about 1 magnitude level down from the main shock. So if we had 7.1, it wouldn't be unlikely that there's a magnitude 6 haunting us somewhere. But that's not always the case. So maybe the 5.4 earlier on today was the big one. Was the biggest aftershock.
Well, fingers crossed.
We're yet to find out.
Fingers crossed on that, of course. And how long should people there expect this to carry on?
Again, experience from maybe similar earthquakes in other areas would suggest that the aftershocks will go on for probably several weeks. They should be on a declining scale, and I guess I've noticed rather informally, rather than tracking it very precisely, that we're commonly down. They're a little bit further apart, and in general they're of smaller magnitude than they were in the first day or so.
What puzzles us, of course, is that a lot of people had heard about the Alpine fault, and this was always seen as the great threat down south. Is that still a risk?
Yes, the Alpine fault still is the fastest slipping fault in the South Island. It's been accumulating its strain at a faster rate than any other fault, so it still poses on average the largest hazard. But an analogy I was saying today is that you can stretch a rubber band slowly or you can stretch a rubber band quickly, and they'll both still break sometime. But the one you stretch faster will obviously break sooner.
The big question is, how do you know when it's going to break?
Yeah, a lot of studies on the Alpine fault, for example, are suggesting that we should be expecting a big earthquake once on average every 300 years or so, 300 to 400 years. Compare that with some of the faults that are closer into Christchurch, say up in the Canterbury foothills, or those are usually in the thousands of years. So it's an average, it's a game of averages, and this one was really a surprise.
Okay, we've got a graphic, just so viewers know what we're talking about, of the Alpine fault, and I think we'll see that up on screen very shortly. So we see that. Now that doesn't come anywhere near Christchurch. Obviously it runs down the Alps there, and we look underneath the movement of the plates. That's what causes the problems. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We know from modern studies that the two plates in the centre of the South Island are moving against one another at about 40 millimetres per year. And so that's stretching the rubber band. And in the central part of the South Island, the Alpine fault is where most of that strain is accumulating, but it does accumulate all the way across the width of the South Island. What
is disturbing is the fact that the fault that caused the damage no one knew about, it was a hidden fault. Does that mean there's going to be lots of those around that we don't know about?
Well, I think there's not lots, but I think there certainly is making us think, and I think there certainly are probably more around, perhaps under the Canterbury Plains. This is in some sense something that we need to take stock of and to stand back and think about this now. But we do know that when we add up all of the fault slip rates across the South Island, and we compare that with how the strain is accumulating from the GPS networks, we know that we've accounted for things plus or minus just a few percent. So that means that these hidden faults are not there in abundance, but they obviously can still be around.
Dr. Colin Berman, thanks for your time tonight. I hope things do settle down there in Christchurch for yourself and, of course, for the Cantabrians down there putting up with the aftershocks.
Absolutely, for the local.